am here for episode 27 of our AI GTM Talks series. Really excited. I'll tell you a little bit about our speaker and collaborator for today. But first, a little bit about our talk series, AI GTM Talks. As you know, we bring on either AI GTM tech CEOs who do a deep dive in a specific tech area in the GTM space. We've also brought on CMOs and revenue leaders and seasoned practitioners who talk about different aspects of how AI is completely transforming go-to-market as we know it today. Now, today's episode is special because we have a speaker here today. I respected him, for quite some time. I'm glad he's able to make time for us. Nicholas Koskowski. Nicholas is an industry analyst, a CMO, and so forth. With that, let me introduce Nicholas. Nicholas, how are you, sir?
Excellent. Thanks for having me. I've been listening to many of the episodes, still the beginning. So I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicholas, for joining us. So really quick, I'm going to put up the next slide here so folks know who you are and, they can see a picture, hopefully a bigger version of who we are. But I think, Nicholas, it's fair to say, I know you had a little bit of background work on for this session, that today we're going to talk a lot about signal-based, right? And tech. And as you know, I know you have a lot of deep expertise in the sales tech space, and this has been a recent trend. So let me kick it off, with a question. Yeah, how do you see this recent trend around signal-based, outbound, if you will, and not just outbound, but signal-based selling, signal-based prospecting, and what do you think, is the reason that it is kind of seems to be, catching on versus whatever has been the way sales has happened in the past?
Yeah. So, leveraging signals have been top of the agenda now for a couple of years. This is a 595 rule, right? Out of your target market, there's probably only 5% of potential buyers that are in market. And of course, nobody was saying that during the heydays, during the bubble, because there was so much money to be spent, in particular within the tech bubble. So that was not needed. And fast forward for the last couple of years, I think prospecting has had to completely retool itself. And the ability with signal, which is something else we should say, the AI and the amount of activity that takes place online that leaves some breadcrumbs, and the ability to crawl data, amass this data, make sense of it, is also enabling signal in new ways that we didn't have a couple of years ago. So that's a little bit of the why I think most people are aware of. The inconvenient truth is that it looks very simple. It's actually harder to implement and, more importantly, to tune. In many cases, the signals are guesses, educated guesses from the sales organization. And there are many of them, and you need to permanently tune those signals. So that's part of the challenge that I want to stress. The second thing is the state of the art is not only signal-based prospecting, it's database selling. Okay. And by that, signal is part of the data. It's new, and this is where you can differentiate, and there's a lot of action, but it's not the only data set. And when you think about selling, it's not just prospecting, it's also dealing with inbound motions, the retention, expansion motions. So it's a very big topic.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I appreciate you kind of teeing it up for us this way. And so you're in a sense, you're saying signals are a piece of the larger, call it the data strategy and data acquisition and everything that a B2B organization needs to do and get their hands around first, right? And that signal is a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you I mean, you can split data into two parts. You have the kind of a static data, which is firmographic, technographic,
Mm-hmm.
financial information, demographic of people. This is
Yep.
relatively stable. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have signals that, by definition, are more dynamic. So
Yep.
because signal was the shiny object of the last couple of years, a bit of the confusion is many providers have kind of rename everything signal. But if you want to be successful, I think you need to bring together the various data sets, both the static ones and the signals.
Yep. Absolutely. So now let's try to, if we could, right, drill down a little bit more into signals, and maybe to support this conversation, I'm going to put up one slide, right, and in that slide, as you know, Nicholas, I know you and I talked a little bit about, call it the modern AI go-to-market tech stack, and the way people are starting to think about it. Still early days, and in all fairness, I think the one I would put up will be more around some of the things we do, which is more focused on signal-based for outbound motion. But as you mentioned, there's several others to also consider. But we'll use this more as a, call it a framing around the different types of signals, and maybe we can have a discussion around that. So let me put that up. Yeah. But maybe you can kick it off. And how do you think about signals, Nicholas? I mean, the types of
Yeah,
signals.
I think yes, we can start with that as you put up the slide, which I think is very good because we have most of the components. Then we can discuss the the arrangement. But I think it's useful to keep in mind the first, second, and third party signal taxonomy. So first party signals are those that you can generate for yourself. It's
Hmm.
typically the activity that prospect and customers have on your website and web properties. This is also it can be also the consumption, the usage of your product. Very, very important in particular for businesses that are based on GTM motion. On
Okay.
the other end, you have third party signals, sorry, that are signal assembled by providers that basically are giving it to on commercial basis to everyone. And
Hmm.
because it's available to everyone, everybody has the same signals more or less. And in between, you have an intriguing second party signals, which are first party signal of some providers that they selectively may offer you. And that could be, that's very interesting because as data kind of commoditizes, having some unique signals can be an important part of the mix. So that's one breakdown. The second thing I want to stress, and I know it's a topic near and dear to your heart, is that signals are not only digital, they're also physical. We tend to
Okay.
over-index on the things that where we can use technology to harness things. So it's obviously much easier to gather digital signals, but there's a lot of activities taking place in the physical world. Think of events where a lot of organizations are putting a lot of money. So it's important to think as well that signals are not only digital, but they're also physical. So when we look at this, I think I can comment the different building blocks. So on the left, what we've discussed is all the signal universe.
Right.
On the
Right.
top, it's a small box, but
Yeah. So,
it's an important
so
one. Yeah, go ahead.
right. Right. So, Nicholas, if you don't mind, I'll interject here for a minute, because I know we want to maybe get into the boxes and, right, what the stack might look like when you start to use these signals. Just wanted to add a little point to elaborate on, I think, a point you made about second party signals. Um, my my read on my sense of second party signals would be signals coming out of some of these, call it solution and software directory type of websites, where they have a dedicated page for a software solution like a G2 or Trust Radius or some of the others. Those are ones I typically think of. Are there other second party signals that you kind of bucket them into second
No,
party?
you have communities
Okay.
there. You have numbers of so Tech Target
Hmm.
is manages the numbers of properties, and
Got
people
it.
to access the content are having their own are basically surrendering their information, and there's a lot of information that you can get as well from those properties. So the
Okay.
the second party data uh, is a little bit of a fluid category, because technically at one point where someone start to massively sell to the entire world all the
Hmm.
information, you it becomes a third party. But there's a lot of businesses where vendors, so for example, a provider of health insurance may provide some signals to its distribution ecosystem. That would
Hmm.
be a second party, uh, uh, a second party signal.
No, that's amazing. I think what you clarified for us is, yeah, it's essentially, call it owned data or proprietary data belonging to somebody, like like you gave the tech target example or the insurance example,
Yeah,
or it could even be call it a Slack community, right, which is owned by a certain organization that's making the interactions within the Slack channels in that community available on some kind of commercial basis to the potential, right? Folks who could potentially do business with the people within that community. So that makes sense. Third party, as you said, is a completely different set of folks who are gathering data across maybe lots and lots of websites using the DSP logs, or right as you serve advertising and media and things like that. Um, would you mind commenting, Nicholas, on the other big trend that certainly what we see, which is if you look at traditional ABM type of platforms and tools, right, or even traditional intent data vendors, right, for the last several years, those have traditionally been company level signals, right? And the big trend in the last year and a half, 2 years has been going from company level to person level signals on your website, off your website, and so on. Anything you want to add or comment on that topic?
yeah. There's two key motions that you need to think about. Is there are some purchases that are essentially made by an individual, where individual signal works, and then you've got company purchasing decision. And this has been a challenge and continues to be a challenge, because you have to assemble a number of signal across a company, and you have to filter without the different signals. Because if you think about a very large companies, different pockets of the organization are going to be interested by different things or in different geographies. So you have a big bag of signals that are very difficult to separate into themes that can be actionable. And the other thing is, once you have signals at the company level, you want to be able to basically figure out if you want to take action in the context of prospecting on those signals. You need to be able to tie those signals to some specific individual.
Right.
So I think what you need is to have an holistic approach. If you go account based, relying only on account signals, it's going to be like looking for a needle in a big haystack. Looking
Yeah.
just at the individual signals is not going to get there. Frankly, this is the next frontier, is figuring out a way, what's called sometime a buying group or a buying committee, depending on
Yeah.
who you speak to, but being able to carve out, buy or group cluster the relevant signals and figure out a way to leverage as well the signal to find out who to engage is the next frontier.
Got it. So that's great. So I think you've kind of highlighted the big themes, right? The big theme is 2 years ago, everybody was thinking company level signals. They called it intent, and now intent has gone a little bit out of fashion. People are using signals, and I think, at least for me, the big distinction is when you think at a signal level, you have to think at a person level, right? The person is a critical ingredient. If you can get to the person level signals, those are ideal. If you get a company level signals, little less than ideal, but in some cases that's the only option you have when you go to large, right, markets, global markets. If you go outside the US, right, a lot of person level signals today are within, literally cover only the US audience, US geography, right? And you got to go company level when you go outside the US. So that's great. So now maybe, Nicholas, we can perhaps talk about the stack a little bit more, because I know you were just getting
Yeah,
into it, which was, um, you know, the traditional stack has been a marketing automation tool, a CRM, and then some sales engagement tool like a sales loft outreach. I think of that as the more traditional, and then maybe an ABM tech, ABM platform. But that whole landscape of tech and tools is getting reshaped, rethought, right? With this kind of a newer, kind of a more modern AI first, AI native, AI centric stack. Um, so maybe, yeah, Nicholas, maybe why don't you, if you don't mind, walk us through this modern tech stack, at least the way we've laid it out. And we've tried to lay it out, obviously, as we already said, from the signal-based outbound lens, but I'm sure there's other things you might think about if you wanted to think about inbound, if you want to think about
yeah,
PLG and so on. But over to you, Nicholas.
yeah. Yeah. So just before I get there, intent was primarily looking at the content consumption,
Right.
and you could get it from businesses that operates web properties where potential buyers would look for information that suggests a buying intent,
Yep.
or through the ad marketplaces could give you hints of company. What people found is that intent by itself is not enough, and
Right.
Signal expand this. So you have job changes, you have funding events, you have many more signals. So the S at the end of Signal is very important. But let me go into this architecture and comments. So the you have all the building blocks. So the first one is the ICP, and it shows small on the drawing, but I think it's very, very important
Yep.
because we tend to say, well, we have our ICP. This is the importance with the ICP is the precision.
Hmm.
And sometime if you start with an ICP which is massive, you basically lose the purpose. And the ICP is also can tremendously benefit from data. The way you can use AI and data to build ICP is actually to feed your existing customers and ideally your best customers,
Hmm.
and augment that data set or correct that data set that is probably not very accurate in your system, let's face it. And based on that, you have a global view and you can let AI figure out for you what are the attributes of the ICP. And the more precise you will be with the ICP definition that starts with static, the better you will be able to find potential signals. So that box looks little, but it's very important. And it's
Yep.
also one box that is fueled by data and AI. Then we have on the all the feed, which are on the bottom. So you're showing the waterfall model is very popular. I think we should discuss at one point the the data. It is clear that right now there's a trend to use multi-sourcing, and waterfall is one technique to use multi-sourcing. It is not the only technique.
Hmm.
And when you look at waterfall, it's based on a lot of tribal knowledge to figure out if this provider doesn't give me this information, maybe I'll look into another one. Data
Right.
quality is important. And
Hmm.
I think this box will evolve so that we can harness AI to figure out what's the best information. So you have your two boxes, and the magic is to bring those three legs together: the signal, your ICP definition, and the data to actually get to the next level. What
Right.
you have here is the model popularized by Clay, and where you have a kind of a workbench that lets you, using, in the case of Clay, a spreadsheet UX, and
Hmm.
lets you assemble those pieces and design your campaign. So we call sometimes we use the word list, we use all kind of new jargon, but it's about building a list that will be the most relevant possible to trigger campaigns, right? This is how we used to call things. And those campaigns, you need to marshal them through systems of engagement,
Hmm.
which can be uh, human-centric and or automation. I personally think that the ultimate goal is to blend the two.
Mm-hmm.
So you have on the top the system of engagement, um, on the bottom the agent. They are more execution that I would push a little bit on the right,
Mm-hmm.
and the content engine is critical. So there's actually a lot of arrows because all the intelligence that you built by aggregating, bringing together the ICP, your static data signal, firmographic, turnographic, and then blah, 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 and the signal, all this information should inform as well the content you should pool, how you should personalize it, and it goes directly into your various campaigns, whether they are human driven, automated, or using a combination of both. And what you're showing in one box, which one could say it's almost two functional box. You have clay, or you have a function which is about building the lists and defining and tuning. And you have another one which consists in activating what we call our plays or campaigns or program, whatever, which is more the automation. And the interesting thing is we have a lot of system to run those different, to execute those different plays. So there's a kind of a mediator where you're showing the example of N8N. It's very difficult for me to pronounce, which is one example where you can marshal the execution towards different system. And the
Right.
beauty of this approach is that you don't have to change any of your systems of engagement. Now,
Right.
when you look at that, we have all the building blocks. It is very campaign centric, very
Okay.
play centric, to use today's terminology. And
Mm.
when you take a step back and you think not just about prospecting, you think about all the different motions, companies need to overlay on top of this architecture their own data architecture.
Right.
And there's a numbers of companies that are thinking, how do I build a unified data layer? And you're showing a lot of different boxes, so each have a little bit of data in it. So
Yeah.
how can I unify all of that to be able not just to run campaigns, but operate a business that uses a mix of motions?
Yeah. So I think you made some very interesting points here. And first, for the folks listening, I want to make it very clear. I mean that the logos we put up are just representative logos. So they're not the only games in town. So let's be honest, right? So at our company at Quantum, we're trying to build this unified signals hub where we bring together and aggregate all the buying signals, right? Person level, company level, first, second, third party. We've got on the website signals, off the website signals. We're now adding social signals. We are doing these field level waterfall enrichment, but then again, we're trying to provide fully curated data back to the customer. And we have a little component called AI Playmaker, so you can build these what we call signal-based segments. This is one that I think, Nicholas, you call them lists. And so we are pushing them into tools like
Yeah.
Clay or some of the other tools, another one called Octave and some others. And the idea there is then downstream, you build those multi-touch message sequences, have them all personalized based on the signal data and the static data. And then you can write them out, as you said, to systems of engagement. So just for the folks listening, certainly Clay is not required. It's optional in the same way that workflow tools like, N8N and Make and Zapier and others are not quote required, but it's just a component. But the point is you have an campaign business rules, logic, step that needs to be built somehow, right? And it's got to be operationalized before you can go and get the messages out. So messages delivered through email, LinkedIn, parallel dialers, phone calls. I think you made a good point there, Nicholas, about being able to blend it in, right? The automated with the human touch. Um, where I think where maybe we could take the discussion next, Nicholas, is really around. As I said, the architecture we're seeing it changing from customer to customers, and the mid market and enterprise is the more traditional When you have these signals aggregated, you're writing into market automation, CRM, and then on to sales engagement. We're seeing those workflows. In some cases, you're bringing on some of these newer components. Do you have any other architectures, anything you've seen, any workflows that you want to maybe mention?
Yeah. So the like we've discussed, the orchestration hub is really two functional elements that can be together or
Hmm.
separated. So it's important. Like I said, the key element that is needs for someone building his or her stack is the data element,
Hmm.
because you do want some kind of persistent data. So what you I see actually a lot of different models. So some are using CRM. Might not be the natural things I would do, because CRM from a data repository is pretty structured. It doesn't
So,
let
so
you add unstructured data and things like that, but you can try to have everything in. You have the ABX platforms that are trying to combine some of the signals and some of the static information and provide a way to unify all that to drive your campaigns.
hmm.
I see companies in the tech space that are building the kind of data warehouse, almost a mini customer data platform. And you have some technology to, for those that don't have the developers to do it. And in larger companies, I'll see very often a big corporate initiative to build using Databricks, Snowflakes, or other type, a kind of unified customer 360 model
Okay.
that brings that persistent. But to give you a sense, and I'm sharing this as an example because they have been they have talked about there's a company called Gorgeous that goes after customer support for the mid market.
Hmm.
What they did is they built their own data warehouse. So they're not using CRM, they build their own data warehouse.
Okay.
They defined a target universe of about 500,000 numbers of accounts.
Hmm.
And they proactively populated this data warehouse with all the information about those targets. And they layer on top of that first the signals. So they define the strategy, and the signals are basically the logic to say, okay, those customers might deserve a marketing engagement or might deserve a sales engagement or whatever. So they lay over they bring the signal to be able to trigger programs that are not just sales programs. They can be marketing programs. They can be anything. So that gives you a glimpse of the styles of architecture that different types of companies are deploying.
Amazing. So I did want to ask you, Nicholas, because I've certainly seen this right at several customers we've worked with over the past several quarters, where some companies are more in some ways forward thinking in that they do what you just said, which is they acquire all the data that's needed across their so-called the entire ICP that they want to pursue over the next 6-12 months, and then they have the data acquisition happen up front. And some others really leave it up to the sales teams and individual salespeople to literally have single one-off licenses for within their sales territories, and then do the data acquisition on the fly as they need it. So clearly, right, there's wasted dollars, wasted underutilization, and when you do seat-based data acquisition versus upfront acquisition at the company level, a lot more data strategy, data cleaning, etc., that can be done upfront. So sounds like what you're saying is the trend these days seems to be to go the let's figure out the TAM ICP data and get it acquired up front and have it nice, clean data ready to go for the entire marketing and sales operation side of the house. Is that right?
Yes, it depends also. Some established businesses more or less have large chunk of the STEM
Right.
because they grew to the point where a large chunk of the business is incremental, upselling, uh, expanding on their
Mhm.
on the customer base. But you touch a key point is this is hard to do and to implement. Some of the options I described requires you to have developers. So this is why I think it's important that companies like you, Clay, and the others are creating the prepackaged building blocks to simplify this. And even
Yeah.
Clay, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about is Clay easy enough?
Hmm.
The when you look at this model, Clay, as you know, is implemented a lot via agencies.
Right.
Why? Because for many companies, it is hard to do. So you
Right.
turn to a partner that has experience in campaign and you start with that. So um, that is a bit of the of some of the challenges. So you will have in the next couple of years, I would say, two movements. I do see more maturity in large enterprises building their data infrastructure. If you listen, so there's a big company in the space called ZoomInfo that happens to be public. And when you look at where the growth is coming from, it's actually bringing the data to populate this type of big data warehouse projects that the large companies are having. So you're going to have a movement where you build those data warehouses. And for many
Mm.
large companies, there's no other way because there's so many systems with fragmented data. So they need some form of unification layer. At the
Right.
same time, and I think it's very important, is from the different angles, from the signal aggregation standpoint, from the uh, data infrastructure standpoint, from the campaign building standpoint, from the workflows, you have a lot of vendors. That's the beauty of this space. Sometimes we complain that it's too fragmented,
Mm.
but all those companies, you guys are collectively creating building blocks that let enterprise compose their architecture for those that don't have developers, that don't have the money to pay for an SI to do the projects that I suggested. You know, it's interesting. There's a new role called the GTM engineer,
Right. Right.
heavily debated on LinkedIn. But when you try to do the inventory, we find a couple of hundred people. And this
Yeah.
include people that had previous titles and decided to retitle themselves because it's a fancy word. So complexity is a big issue. So it's important that you have some kind of that complexity is taken out by packaging some of the building blocks that we've discussed on your architecture slide.
Yeah, so Nicholas, I think you made some very key points, which is why I put up this slide, right? Because and full credit, I do want to call out Brendan Short. I mean, I did, I was watching some of the stuff he wrote on LinkedIn, and he put up this X and Y axes. So I want to credit him with that idea of thinking about this whole signal-based tech space, where he said, look, there's going to be some tools that go in the direction of simple, make it very easy to use for the growth marketer, demand marketer, sales leader to be able to understand the signals and use simple AI English language prompts and build their cohorts of what you call a list or a segment, and then go figure out how to action it. And then you're going to have the GTM engineers, rev ops folks, right? And the certain tools probably cater to them more, and which is right, which is another way, but it's more complex, more technical, more analytical, and so forth. And then the other dimension is the how many signals, what kind of signals do you support, do you offer, can you deal with, can you curate, right? And then there's also the data curation aspect, right, which is, as you said, don't have to have tribal knowledge about this data vendor is better than this one, but the your data provider partner, or the signal tech partner, has done the heavy lifting for you, and they give you ready to consume, ready to use curated data, right, at a record level, for somebody showing signal on your site at a person, somebody off your site as a person, on and on and on. So but I think you're right, Nicholas. I think companies will need to make some choices about how much of this do they want to take on in-house, how much of this do they want to say, hey, I want to get ready to consume, ready to use curated data combined with the tech that my business users can use, right? End users can use. I would think that will become a key consideration in the coming weeks and months. Your thoughts?
So I really like the horizontal axis because it helps a company be honest about what it can do by itself and where it should rely on providers with package offering.
Right.
I'm not going to comment the logos. The way I see, I think I would move the horizontal axis to the bottom because candidly, I don't think you can live in today's environment with static data and
Mm.
with manual processes. So all enterprises are probably starting somewhere at the bottom of the chart.
Got
And
it.
for them, moving on next is to move up. And the dynamic is probably tied to adding signals. The automated reflects how you can curate and bring the data together, the data that you need, and how you can provide on the left simple tools to basically leverage this data to run your program.
Yeah.
That's my read of this diagram.
Right. So I want to then move the discussion next, Nicholas, to quality, right? Data quality, because I know that bad data not going to help anybody, right? Um, and so I want to touch upon data quality and how customers can figure out, in a more easy way, assessment of data quality from different apps and tools and tech. And the other is I did want you to comment on this current, lot of call it, discussion around enrichment waterfalls. Good, bad.
Yeah.
How do you see them shaping up in the coming weeks and months? And then, what do you think at the end of the day customers really want?
Well, they want quality data and they want the complexity out.
Right.
The key issue is, can you get everything from a single provider?
Okay.
Um, that's really where some of the debate is. So
Hmm.
ZoomInfo will say, we do this work for you. Other will
Hmm.
disagree. So there's two aspects in the waterfall. The waterfall is a way to multi-source.
Hmm.
I'm observing that right now the multi-source is more from a coverage standpoint. If
Okay.
vendor A doesn't have Nicholas' email address, maybe vendor B has it.
Right.
So I think waterfall needs to become more sophisticated to inject an element of data quality.
Okay.
The second element of waterfall is you pay by the drink.
Right.
And for many enterprises, they're not exactly sure about those different providers. So it is reassuring to pay by the drink.
Hmm.
You have a little more control of your cost, and you do not put all your eggs in a single basket.
Yep.
Um, what I see is that there are many cases where multi-sourcing is needed.
Mm.
If you are, I mean, most of the data set I see are heavily skewed toward the coverage of the tech industry and IT
Mm.
buyers.
Hmm.
But the world is much, much bigger.
Yep.
If you are in healthcare, you're probably going to check specific vendors,
Mm.
such as Definitive Healthcare. I try to avoid mentioning names, but I'm
Mm.
sure very few people have heard of them. They're
Yeah.
highly specialized, and they can find things that very few will help you find in education. Find me the list of all the K-12 um, um, not companies, but institutions,
And
constructions.
same is true for
So
SMB.
if you
Right.
look, yes, as soon as you start to look outside tech, you find that it's very, very hard to
Mhm.
rely on a single data set. Then there's something else. Often the quality ties to when was the information last updated.
Yeah.
This is why I think that back on the discussion we were having on your previous chart,
Yeah.
static information will have to become more dynamic. Otherwise, you're going to be in terrible
Mm.
trouble. Um, so, and when you look at it right now, I think there's close to half of the traffic on the internet is scrapers and crawlers.
Mm.
So you can also, for what you think is good for your business, assuming you have the skill sets, and tomorrow, because AI is going to simplify it, maybe someone will be able to simply say what he or she wants and get it done. You have the scraper and the crawlers that can bring an additional element
Mhm.
of which is unique, your secret sauce
Mhm.
to go to market. So I think right now, I mean, I see probably two new providers of data coming up. Very hard to know exactly the quality. There's no other way
Mm.
than to test.
Test, right.
The compelling aspect of using the waterfall is you are pushing part of the test to a provider with a
Yeah.
business model that you have to try thing. But I think there's a huge opportunity from a vendor standpoint to make sense of the data and provide the technology to bring it together and do that selection, which to some extent you're doing with signals. When you say a
Okay.
signal hub, you're doing this aggregation curation. I think it
Correct.
needs to be expanded
Mm.
more globally. And I think the data quality is should be top of mind. It is not right now because we are like kids in a candy store. There's
Yeah.
something new every day, so I jump on it.
Yeah. No, and to
These
be
are some of
honest,
the
Nicholas,
consideration I wanted to share. Yeah.
yeah, no, no, for sure. Because it's interesting you say this because we are constantly testing new data partners, data providers. Literally every lead record, rich right record we deliver to the customer, we have to test, as you said, across multiple providers to find the best one at the most reasonable cost that we can build into our records. So that's one thing we're seeing. The second thing we're seeing is customers are doing a lot of testing too. For example, we have say the warm leads that we deliver de-anonymized traffic on the site. They very often test us against another one, two, three other providers. They see who's delivering better quality, and then they're even waterfalling on their side. So they might anchor us in one customer. We are the
Yeah.
backup in another customer. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on, a lot of wiring, if you will, that companies are doing. So I think as
And
we
I think
wrap up,
this
yeah.
function is a key part of what you guys need to bring to the table as well. Anyway, sorry, I
Correct. So
cut you
actually,
off.
you're right because we had to build the ability to be at the front end or be at the back end of different waterfalls. Even of our own data, the leads data, our website leads data that we deliver, so we can actually let customers push the leads from the other tool over into us so that they don't get charged twice. The other thing is, as you said, costs. Building APIs so that you don't pay twice, and then segmenting out the data costs so that they get the minimal needed from you, and then they can add on other things from other providers. So there's so many different considerations. It's been an interesting discussion. Final thoughts, Nicholas, on signal based as a topic, and how do you see that evolving over the next 12, 24 months? And what do you see as a continuing role of AI in it, just again looking ahead, just to wrap up?
So I think it's here to stay. Like I
Yeah.
said, I think it needs to come into a broader picture with the data. And I think the future is having more mature offering that lets you compose your solution. That is point number
Hmm.
one. Point
Okay.
number two, it needs to be simplified
Mm.
to reach out the masses and not be dependent on just tech, and tech having the luxury of GTM engineers. The big opportunity for the industry is to break out into quote unquote mainstream, which are all the non-tech tech industry. And I think AI will bring new ways of doing things by simply declaring in plain English what you want
Yeah,
and let the AI agent figure out the logic and get things executed for you.
got it. So I put up the thank you slide here, Nicholas. How should folks get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, LinkedIn or email is the best way.
Okay. Thank you, Nicholas. Amazing. It's been a great discussion. And folks, so that's it. That wraps episode 27 of AI GTM Talks.